of the 4th Arthuria mock debate tournament. We have CaptainNatsu here, Footsoldier here. For this round, CaptainNatsu is taking the position that parents should be able to place their unborn children in genetic experimentation trials to produce specific/preferred traits or attributes. Footsoldier's taking the opposition. This round they'll have 40 minutes to debate. As always, winner will be based upon who conceived, no concessions made. You, the audience, can vote on who you think performed better in the debate. You guys can get started. Thanks for debating.
Nice one. So, Captain, would you like to introduce the prop, or shall I?
You go ahead.
Okay, sure. So, essentially, what we're going to be talking about is genetic modification or selecting genes of embryos of children, or perhaps also germline editing techniques to modify the genetic makeup and attributes of unborn offspring before they're born, so that we can select for particular attributes. Maybe we want to select for attributes which predispose the child less towards certain diseases, or maybe we use the gene editing technology to remove the chance of getting certain hereditary diseases. There's even research which is currently going on, very controversial research in China, where they purportedly successfully were able to engineer against HIV transmission in unborn twins. And this was seen as one of the first, if not the first, success in this type of genetic modification of humans. But this is obviously not without controversy, and it's caused a huge amount of controversy, in fact.
It was also the first time it was tried, right?
Sure, and this resulted in the main researcher, the head researcher, actually getting a hefty fine, something like $500,000 fine, and he went to prison for 3 years. And there was a huge conspiracy surrounding this. So there's obviously a huge ethical discussion. So that's what we're going to be discussing today: the ethics of, and not only the ethics, but also the practical issues surrounding gene editing technology. So I'm obviously going to be arguing against allowing this. I think we should prohibit this, and Captain's going to argue for it, or at least say that there's no problem, there's no reason why we should disallow it. So, would you like to maybe make a case for why you think this is okay, that it doesn't pose any problems, or do you have any positive case, or is your case purely just going to say there's no reason to forbid it?
I mean, you've got a bit of the burden of proof on your hands, seeing as you have to show why it has to be prohibited. So I guess you can go ahead first.
Sure. So I would agree with you in the respect of everything. In a way, you could view morality as everything is permissible until you forbid it for some particular reason. So I accept the burden of proof to make a claim for why it should be forbidden.
Wait,
Then
before you go forward, I do have one question. Are
sure.
you an atheist, or are you a believer in a god or a supreme being?
Ew, I'm not going to levy any religious arguments
Yeah, but I
in
just
this
want to
debate.
know.
It seems a bit of a tangent. I guess it depends on what we define as God, right? I would say that I could say that I'm agnostic to some sort of deist type of religious entity, but I'm definitely an atheist in respect to the Christian God and Zeus and all of the others, right?
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
so getting back onto the topic, I guess, I accept the burden of proof to provide a case why we should perhaps be very wary of this, to the point where it would be better if we just didn't open the Pandora's box. And that's what the type of case I'm going to put forth is going to be. It's going to be a Pandora's box opening type event, because the second you start allowing this and permitting it, it's already happened in China, right? But then there was huge outrage and huge backlash and prison sentences. But if we say no, actually it's okay, and we just go ahead and start performing genetic interventions, selecting embryos and doing germline genetic modifications, and just make it completely okay to do these procedures, then there's all sorts of horrendous, potentially horrific problems that could result from this. So, even if you're okay with the modification of genes to prevent um, diseases, hereditary diseases. For example, the HIV transmission case we've already got a real life case of with the Chinese twins. But even if you're okay with that, if you're giving a green light to the procedure, you're opening the Pandora's box, which might lead us down a path of designer babies. That's the debate proposition as well, is not just preventing hereditary disease transmission, but also selecting for some desirable traits in offspring. And then how about the implications of that societally, with the unfairness, the imbalance in society will just, it will just spiral off into hyper intelligence, right? We'll have these babies who are hyper intelligent, because if you can modify anything you want about the babies, and maybe some people will start off with, I don't know, blue eyes and blonde hair or something silly like that. We could think of some sort of like Nazi-esque visualization of like purifying genetically the human race, and everyone will be like, oh, there's a level of purity to obtain in certain traits, and then we'll see in society that certain traits will be frowned upon. It would be like associated with peasantry having certain traits, and then it would obviously be intelligence, and if you're not intelligent, then you're bad. Or conversely, it could be if someone is modified, then we could see that there's an unfairness and unjustness that is unnatural modification, and there'd be huge tension in society, huge social issues, huge social implications. But it gets even worse than that. If we go down the rabbit hole far enough, we can see that we could even weaponize this technology. There could be, I don't know who would do it, some sort of nefarious interests from some government or some private nefarious corporations putting in genetic uh, sort of chinks in the genetic armor, so that we can manufacture certain viruses to target these chinks in the armor and make people pay for the antidotes, and all these implications just spiral off. The second you open Pandora's box, you can't put the lid back on, and that's the problem. It's not that there might be some nice sort of some tolerable usage of it. It's once you give the green light to it, it's a slippery slope. And where are we going to be in 20 years? I can go into more detail on the points, but I thought as an introductory statement, it's getting long enough. There's so many concerns, but I think that will probably do for now. So, Captain, if you want to address any of that, or make a case for why these things aren't valid reasons, then I'd be interested in hearing that.
Okay, so I'll try and go through each point you made one by one. But first, I want to say something. So you take a bit of an atheistic point of view, and in an atheistic point of view, morals are based on your subjective experience. Would you agree?
No, I'm a moral objectivist, so I reject subjectivism as nonsense.
Okay, how can you substantiate your claim that there are objective moral grounds?
Because I can just be an instrumentalist when it comes to morality, right? So I don't have to assert the Platonic entity floating about which contains the moral truth, or point to a sky wizard. I can just simply be instrumental in terms of my moral claims. I can say that if morality is a concept which we are to take seriously, then it would be applied in a universal fashion, like a natural law of nature in a way. And
Well,
if it is to function that way, then we have to universalize it. So I just use the universalizability principle from Kant, and that's how I get to my morality from there.
I mean, sure, but let's so your moral standpoint, it would be bad for for babies to be subsidized in certain ways, but you have to show how that is objectively morally right or wrong before you can make the claim. Otherwise, you're just making claims without substantial evidence.
Sure, I
But
can make a number of cases. Would you like me to, or do you want to continue your introductory statements?
well, first I want to go through all the points you made.
Sure,
So,
let's do it.
you noted China, a case in China, but it seems to have succeeded. So I don't really know how you can take that as a negatory. It seems like a pository to me, seeing as it actually is a successful showing of the genetic modification, if you will, or whatever.
Sure,
And
I'm writing down your points, so if you want to go through them one by one, I'll just take notes and address it after you're finished.
okay. So you expressed a a fear, I guess, to people going through this in a manner that would cause bigger problems. But I feel like if we would do these kind of experiments in let's say a lab and first test thoroughly with all the with the thing with the um let's say evidences, and we test a lot and do a lot of experiments, then don't you think we could do this in a safe manner? Well, I think we might be able to do it in a safe manner and see if scientists can replicate the what happened in China, as that was a successful attempt on it. You also expressed concerns about babies being extra smart, which I didn't really get, because if babies are extra smart, then won't that just cause us as a society to get further and make more progress as a general society and make more achievements, like more better technology and stuff like that? I mean, like, how's it bad if we have more Teslas around? Um, let's see. I mean, you expressed concerns about people choosing specific genes and that would cause, let's say, a lot of white males to come around. But I could actually argue the latter, because if we are able to genetically modify babies, then we could try and implement and make sure that that there's more proportionate amount of black babies in retrospect to white babies. So I don't really know. So like, yes, there could be a lot of white babies, but you haven't really substantiated your claim that that would actually be what would happen. So I think those were the points you made, right?
Yeah, sure. I guess there's more implications that we can get into at a later date. One of the most severe being the cascading effect of the doubt surrounding genetic modification. So that is essentially a part of um, number three, I guess, or number two. What happened in China was a success story. So we can get into that as part and parcel of that. So I guess the first objection that you've raised is something along the lines of if I'm a moral objectivist, I would need to believe in God, or that. What is the specific objection you have to me being a
Well,
moral
okay, so
objectivist in a secular sense?
you made a number of moral claims and tried to put it in a morally bad light. But if there isn't a lawgiver to morals, then morality is based on your or on your perspective of what good and bad is. But good and bad doesn't have a scientific definition. It's just your perception of good and bad. Therefore, anything that you would classify as morally wrong or morally good would be totally based on your subjective experiences, not on a substantial objective ground. So if your morality isn't based on anything substantial or objective, then how can you make a moral claim against someone who's trying to do something?
Sure, I can do that in varying different ways, and as I say, I'm not a moral subjectivist, right? I think subjectivism.
Yeah, but you have to back up the claim that you can objectively prove morals in an atheistic point of view.
Right, and that's what I'm going to establish, right? So, yeah, just to close off the subjectivism thing, I completely deny that subjectivism makes any sense at all outside of the the descriptivism as part of the categorical imperative, which I'll get into right now. So, um, so are you familiar with like Immanuel Kant's critique of pure reason, or the groundwork for the metaphysical morals, or any of Kant's moral sort of groundwork?
Nope.
Sure. Okay. So that's not a problem. I just need to explain, I guess, how we get there in a very, very short nutshell. I guess it's quite difficult to convey deontological Kantian perspective in 2 minutes, but I'll try. So we can just say that firstly, we don't have to say that a God exists, or that there are moral facts that float about in space or something. We don't need to say that. We can just be agnostic, or we can just be instrumental as to the existence of moral truths. We can just say it seems like morality does exist. So if we're talking about it, we can just say
But
it seems like it exists.
how does it seem like it exists?
Well, we're
What's the
talking about
evidence to substantiate
morality,
it?
right? Yeah,
What?
we're talking about morality right now. So it exists in if
Yeah,
you think that
in
there's
our
a
minds, but that doesn't mean it objectively actually exists. It just means that it's a that if when in an atheistic point of view, it's a metaphysical, it's something in a metaphysical realm that we conjured with our minds. It isn't anything actually objective.
right, yeah, but what you're doing here is confusing some sort of ontological objectivity with the epistemological claims of moral objectivity, which I'm about to establish, right? So you're saying that there's nowhere to point to or something, but I'm going to get to that, right? As long as we can both agree that the word morality isn't just indecipherable, it's not incoherent. You don't think that when I say the word morality, I'm saying something equivalent to like you do understand that
I
I am
mean,
producing a meaningful word with that
I
utterance,
mean,
right?
it's a word that I am familiar with. It doesn't mean that it holds any substantial impact in the actual in the objective world.
Right. So, but we can talk about morality, right? You're not just gonna
I
deny
know
that
what you
morality
mean when you
exists.
say morality, but that doesn't mean it's substantiated. I can say I think killing people is good. That doesn't make it substantiated.
Sure. So I'm gonna get into all of that, but I'm just trying to see that you're able to talk about morality. You're not like some sort of like nihilist, moral
I
nihilist,
mean,
right?
I'm not,
You
but I
you
think
do
atheism leads to moral nihilism.
right. Well, maybe I can make a case that it doesn't here. So let's just grant that morality is something we can talk about at least. So if morality is something that we can talk about, then it wouldn't make any sense to say that morality exists in this room differently to how it exists in another
Well, it
room.
could actually.
If
That's not
morality
true.
exists,
Because if you're in the room of Hitler, morals will the way that they're gonna talk about morality is a lot different.
well, that's just presupposing subjective morality, right? So if
Yeah,
we're
that but
looking for
morality
if
is
we're looking for an
subjective. Okay.
objective, if we're looking for an objective account of morality, we can't say that the moral truth is dependent on the room you're in, because that would be
Yeah,
the
but you have to prove
antithesis
it's
of
not.
objective morality.
You have to prove that if I'm in a conversation with Hitler, he'll have the same moral standpoints as you. If you're gonna say morality is objective and everybody feels the same.
No, I didn't say if everyone feels the same, because that's just
I mean,
feeling,
if
right?
it's
I'm going to
objective and
establish.
it's not based on the like presupposition a certain person has, and it's not based on that, and it's actually based on objective truths, then shouldn't everybody have the same sense of moral grounds?
Right, so we're going to get to that, right? So if you allow me to paint the picture, I'm not getting very far because I guess you keep interrupting with objections to what I'm saying. I haven't
Okay,
really got to
sorry.
anything
Go.
yet. But
Yeah, sorry.
so if we say that there are objective moral facts that are true in the world, and if we have a psychopath going around chopping people's heads off, we can point to that psychopath and say that psychopath is doing something wrong. if you're some sort of like if you're saying that moral relativism is true, or like subjectivism in the extreme sense is true, or something like this, or there's no moral truth, then the best you could do is point to him and say his actions seem wrong to me. You couldn't say that his actions are wrong full stop, right? You couldn't say that his actions are wrong irrespective of what the psychopath feels. But we can do that with an objective moral framework, because we can deduce what is morally correct or not by universalizing an action. So this is what Kant's universalizability principle is, which is part of the formulation of the categorical imperative. So we take an action, let's say theft, stealing, and if we want to know whether stealing's wrong or not, we universalize it. And if everyone were to immediately start stealing and be okay with stealing, then stealing would annihilate itself as a concept, because it would no longer be theft, it would just be acquisition, right? Because everyone would be okay with it. So if if it annihilates itself, we can see that that action can't possibly be right, because if it were to be enacted as a universal law of nature, then it wouldn't work. It would implode. It would self-destruct. So of course we can see that stealing is wrong in that sense. We can see for other reasons similar reasons why rape would be wrong, why many other things would be wrong, and we can see that using the universalizability principle, we can get to moral truths. So the only thing that you can do is just deny that the universalizability principle is somehow some way of reaching what is objectively wrong or right. But I think you're just going to be taking some sort of like fringe case and saying that Kant was an idiot or something, that he was completely wrong. Like, I don't know how you're going to make a crazy case for that. But do you at least understand where I'm coming from with objective morality through the universalizability principle?
Yeah, but I still think it's unsubstantiated because you're
Right.
saying you're saying that stealing is obviously wrong because if we didn't make it bad, everybody would steal. But that's just saying that if we allow something, then everybody will do it, so it's bad. That's not a substantiated claim. That's just saying people will do it. Okay, people will do it, but what makes that action morally, objectively wrong? That's you haven't established how you can make it objectively wrong. You also pointed to the psychopath and said, well, if the psychopath is killing people and we don't have objective morality, then I can't say you're wrong. I can only say, from my point of view, your action was wrong. But you wanting morality to be objective doesn't make it objective. So if you are from a point of view of saying like, okay, it's wrong for you to do that because well, if you say I can say that person is wrong for doing something because I want objective truth to be true, then that wouldn't really make it any more substantiated.
Okay, so let's address those 2 points in reverse order. So you are then committing yourself in this way. If you're sticking by what you just said and you're not going to concede what you just said, then you have to say that murder, like the psychopath, what he's doing isn't wrong for him. You're going to have to say the
I mean,
psychopath who
I'm
decapitates
saying
children.
I'm saying in your worldview, you can't substantiate the claim that the psychopath is doing something wrong. I'm not saying that that's the same in my worldview. I'm saying that's I'm trying to use because you're making a claim that something is bad, but you have to be able to substantiate why it's bad with your own worldview. You can't just say it's bad. Well, okay, prove to me it's bad. Prove to me that with your worldview, you can prove that the claim that you're making is substantiated. So if you're gonna say that murder is bad, in any sense in the debate, you're gonna have to prove why what you're saying is bad is bad. It wouldn't
Right.
be hard for me to prove it was bad from a theistic point of view, but seeing
Right.
as you're not a
I feel
theist,
like
you have to.
you I feel like you're dancing between 2 separate points. We need to go point by point, right? So first point on the table is um me not being able to say that what he's doing is bad, right? So this is a question to you. Are you able to say that the psychopath is doing something wrong?
Um, I'm willing. Well, okay, so
Well, yes
that's.
or no?
I'm gonna say I can say that with my worldview, but I fail to see how you can say it with your worldview.
Right. So
Like
your
you can say that it's bad, but that's not a good point for your perspective on a certain situation. You have to prove that you can establish that a certain action is bad in your own worldview. You can't just point to a different worldview and say, well, that worldview says it, even though I don't agree with it. I'm gonna have a stance that doesn't have anything to do with my worldview, but I'm just gonna adopt a different worldview for the specific discussion. I mean, that's not being um, that's yeah, that
Okay,
wouldn't
let's
really
go
be a
point by
fair
point. Let's go
assessment.
point by point. So do you concede that it's possible to say that what the psychopath is doing is bad?
Not from your worldview.
Do you concede
Well, I'm saying it might be okay, actually I'm gonna rephrase it. I'm gonna say it might be possible, but I don't see how you can do it.
do you concede that it's possible to say that a psychopath beheading babies is bad?
I'm gonna say with your worldview, I don't see how you can establish how that's gonna be objectively morally wrong. But in my own worldview, I would say that that's bad.
Okay, so you concede that point, right? So then we can move on to the first point you made about how I establish it. So do we have a concession on that second point?
Um, we don't have established. We don't agree that you can make the claim that it's objectively right with your worldview. But if you adopt a different worldview, you might be able to do it.
Right, so there's 2 points on the table. The second point, which I'm trying to get concession on right now, is the fact that it's not possible to make a claim about what the psychopath is doing is wrong. But you've just said that
Well,
under your
you can
worldview, you can make that. So can you
yeah, you
concede
can
that
make the
point? We
claim
can
if you
move
can
on to the first point.
substantiate it.
Sorry?
You can make the claim if you can substantiate how that specific action is morally wrong,
Okay, so that's a concession by implication on point 2. So
objectively.
point 1, how do I establish that a self-defeating action when universalized is wrong? Well, it's because it's self-defeating. If it's not possible to universalize it, it shows you it can't possibly be the moral right, because if morality is to be something that acts as a universal law, a law of nature, it's not possible that it could be morally good if it's self-defeating. It's literally impossible, definitionally impossible, right? Because if you take morality to mean something which is possible to be right or wrong as something like a universal law of nature, it must be universalizable. Otherwise, it's impossible because it's self-defeating. It's how would you say that something would be morally good if it self-defeats?
Okay, so there's two problems with that. First of all, you're presupposing that it's a law of nature while you haven't substantiated. You haven't been able to prove that it is actually a law of nature. I mean, morality is just based on your presupposition of what you think is right and wrong in an atheistic point of view. You haven't shown how it's actually a law of nature. That's kind of where the grounds on where your castle, let's say, is built. You're saying, well, it's a law of nature. This action will destroy the law of nature, which you also haven't shown how it does, and therefore it's bad. But first, you have to prove how how you substantiate the claim that it is actually a law of nature, because I really don't see how you can do that without believing in a lawmaker. And you then have to prove how it's self-defeating.
Right, okay, so I'll tackle that. It is a bit of a shame that we've got into this back and forth about about morality before we can
I
actually
mean, it
discuss the
is
actual topic itself. Like I was quite interested in actually talking about germline editing and CRISPR and Cas9 gene editing and embryos and all this fun stuff. I was interested in talking about that, but it feels like we're not moving past this morality point. But I will address this morality point. Hopefully, we can move on with a few minutes left of the debate to actually discuss the juicy bits. So you've presented yourself now. You've dug yourself into a bit of a hole, and I can see that you've got a dilemma in front of you. Horn one is you have to reject that it's possible. So you have to concede or at least you have to go back on the point that you said that you can say that a psychopath is doing something wrong, or
I
you
said it's possible in my more. I said it's possible in my worldview. I never said
right.
it's possible to substantiate in your own
So
worldview. That's kind of like
if
the
you
ontological argument for God's existence. Well, you can think of it, so it must exist.
look, so you conceded that point, right? That you can actually say the psychopath is doing something wrong.
In
Okay,
my
good.
worldview, you haven't substantiated
Yeah,
how you
good.
can do it
Right,
in yours.
good. Good. So now we've established it's possible to say the psychopath is doing something wrong. And by virtue of it being possible that the psychopath is doing something wrong, that necessarily entails that moral objectivism is true, or there's some
But
benchmark or
no,
some standard by which to measure the wrongness. Otherwise, you're just going to have to say that the psychopath is doing everything right according to his own moral conduct, and you somehow think it's wrong. You can't, if you're saying no, the psychopath is doing something wrong, like you've just already conceded, you have to grant that there's some objective moral truth, or
no,
at
I
least
had
an
I never.
instrumental.
Okay, okay,
Well,
go on.
if you don't, you can't have your cake and eat it. Either you say that the psychopath is doing
No,
something
that's what
wrong
you're
and
trying
there's
to
an
do. You're
objective
saying
standard. Oh, I've
you're
already
saying
asked you if you can say that the psychopath is doing something wrong, and you said under your worldview you can. So
okay,
you've
okay,
conceded the
okay,
point already. Now you're
okay.
going back on the point. Don't flip
No,
flop
no, no,
around the
no,
point.
no, 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 no. I said it's possible to say in my worldview, and I specifically said I don't know where that's capable of being substantiated in your own worldview. I don't know. I don't think you can truthfully say the psychopath is doing something bad
I've already explained.
if you if yeah, okay, let's say there wasn't there okay, if you don't believe that there is a god or a lawmaker of morality, and you're going to say that somebody is doing something bad, okay, then you and then in a debate you'll have to be able to substantiate your claim to whether to how something is bad. Your claim was this: well, I can you can say that it's bad, thus there must be a measure of morality. But just because you can physically say that something is bad doesn't mean that it's logical coherent for it to be bad in your moral worldview. You can't just say, well, I can say it's bad, thus it there must be a measurement, or it must be a law in nature. That's not a substantiated claim.
Right, okay, so it just seems to be resultant out of a confusion of what the claim is and how I'm reaching my
Okay,
objective moral
what's your
truth.
claim
Right, so
specifically?
we've already agreed it's
No,
possible to
no, I
say
don't
that the
agree.
psychopath is wrong in some way.
No,
In some worldview that you would agree with,
no,
regardless of whether that's theistic or whatever, you can say, you don't interrupt me, you can say that the psychopath is doing something wrong, right? And so then we've established there's some objective benchmark. Whether you agree with my objective benchmark or not, we're saying there is an objective benchmark. And if morality works in a way where it's applicable to the world as a law of nature, as something that could be coherent as a moral truth. Because I don't know what it would mean for a moral truth to be applicable on a room by room basis. How can it be morally right to murder someone in room A and morally wrong in room B if morality is objective and the action of murdering someone is wrong or right? It is contradictory. So it would have to be a law of nature, right? So what I'm seeing here is that
but okay, no, no,
all of
wait,
this is a
one thing.
derail. All of this
No,
is a
wait,
derail.
wait,
Dude, all of this
no,
is a
but
derail because you don't want to address the core topics, which I really want to get
no, no,
into
no,
the juicy stuff.
no, no, no.
We're running out of time. This is
No,
all
wait,
a
wait,
derail, and you're
foot
just
soldier,
trying to
please.
attack Kantian deontology. Like,
No,
why?
no, Footsoldier. You actually made a perfect point against your own worldview. You said,
Or
how can
spell
it
it
be
out.
wrong in one room and right in the. No, no, please. You said, how can it be wrong in one room and be bad in the other room? Okay, then it can't be objectively true if it's. The objective truth can't exist if it's wrong in one room and good in the other room. If in the subjective view of, let's say, Hitler, it was apparently good to kill 6 million Jews. Now, in the that means that in let's say Hitler's room, it was okay to kill 6 million Jews according to him. In, let's say, your room, it's bad to kill Jews. That means if there is a difference in opinion and there isn't a lawmaker, there isn't anything that you haven't pointed to anything that makes a certain action bad or good, that would constitute that if there are two different rooms and there are two different points or two different people that have a difference in their presupposition of what morality is, then it can't be objective.
Okay, so we're running out of time. I think we've got 2 minutes left. I feel like we've derailed into just debating Kantian ethics and just saying that Kant was wrong or something like this. I don't think that's been so valuable. I'm disappointed we didn't get into the actual juicy stuff, which I was really interested in getting into. Okay, Stone said that there's 5 minutes left. Let's quickly put this aside. It seems that you're just confused as to what Kantian objective ethics is actually
How
getting
am I
at.
confused?
We just don't seem to be understanding what the universalizability principle is or the categorical imperative. And I can't blame you,
Also,
dude, because like not knowing what it is and me trying to explain it in 2 minutes in a 40-minute debate on modified babies, like it's not realistic to explain the categorical imperative in that way.
I mean,
But
you have to prove out
we
something is
shouldn't be
bad
derailed on
or
this topic. We shouldn't be derailed on this topic because I
yeah, but
really
the
want to
thing
just
is,
quickly,
okay, foot
can we
soldier. The thing
quickly
is, if
get
you're
into the
gonna make a
genetic
moral claim
modification?
to why something is bad, you need to be able to substantiate the claim to why that which you call bad is bad. You can't say this is
Sure.
bad, this is bad, this is bad without being able to say,
Sure,
well, this is the reason
universalizability
it is bad,
principle. Sure, the
right?
universalizability principle, the categorical imperative, Kantian ethics. I'm a deontologist. We've already gone over that, but you don't seem to understand it. So let's quickly get
No, I
into some other
understand. I just
claims,
don't
right? So
agree with
can
it.
we
At least
replicate
I
the China
understand what
study
you.
successfully? With the China twins, the problem is they're not old enough yet for us to see if it's actually been successful. The problem with gene splicing, with CRISPR editing on all of these edits that are made, what normally happens is there are unpredictable mutations of the genes further down the line. And what you're doing by this is you're creating a genetic lineage which the people in that genetic lineage aren't consenting to. They haven't consented to be genetically modified. So you're genetically modifying them without their consent, and there could possibly be these random mutations which you can't possibly completely exclude, which could predispose you to other diseases, carcinogens, like less cancer fighting abilities. So it could actually be bad for health. It could. We didn't even get a chance to go into the societal aspects of like the elitism in the society caused by this, the social divide caused by genetic versus natural babies. There's so many issues that I really would have liked to explore, but I think we got hung up on that point. Maybe we can rematch this at some point and do it outside of the debate tournament context and just do it as a normal debate. But there's so many points that I'd love to discuss with you. It's a shame we got caught up on the just debating whether we can even make a moral claim. But I guess that was my closing statement, Captain. If you'd like to make a closing statement, then I guess we can wrap this up because we're out of time.
Okay, so based on what we've seen in China, from what I've heard from you and what I've read, kinda, it doesn't seem that there is any evidence that there was anything that went wrong. Now, you said there could be problems further in the line. Sure, with pretty much anything that we do, even if it's technology, there can be reproduction. There can be bad things that happen in the future. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. Now you said you're genetically modifying them without their consent, but it's not like they would have any consent on the matter if you wouldn't genetically modify them. I don't see how that is an argument. Now, Footsoldier is trying to put a moral claim, which I would say is unsubstantiated, even if it was true. But the thing is, he hasn't shown any evidence as to why, and well, you haven't shown any evidence as to why it is that these things will cause negatory effects. Now, I can say that further in the line, we might be able to be better in making sure that babies don't grow up with anemia, a blood disease that causes you to have less blood cells. These are potential benefits of doing these kinds of genetic modifications. So if you're gonna make the pository claim that we can't do something, then you have to have substantial evidence to why the um, benefits don't outweigh, or how the negatives outweigh the benefits, which I don't really see how you've done in this debate.
Okay, I think we're out of time. I would love to continue the debate another time.